Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing dumper contact, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I provide audio coaching to help people try and get their ex back or get a new girlfriend or boyfriend. Check out my website for more details. www.dateme.tips. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing dumper contact, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, it can be very exciting to receive contact from your dumper. But what type of contact might you receive from your ex? Of course, nothing can be guaranteed, and sadly, sometimes a dumper will never contact their ex again. In today's podcast, I'm going to describe 3 potential types of dumper contact if they one day decide to contact their dumpee. So let's get straight into this. And number 1 is the good. So the first type of dumper contact that we're going to be describing today is the good. It's the one that you want to receive if you are a dumpee and that you want to try to get your ex back. So what is good dumper contact? Well, good dumper contact, first of all, comes from them, in respect to that it is not a response to you. What I mean by this is that a dumper has contacted a dumpee off their own back. They've made this decision themselves, and they are not responding to something that a dumpee has sent out. I always suggest that if you have been dumped, you should never contact your ex again unless they contact you first, and hence good dumper contact will come from the dumper. There will be no response necessary because the dumpee wouldn't have sent anything out. Additionally, this contact would be unnecessary. So if you receive contact from your dumper but it is necessary, then again, unfortunately, this isn't good dumper contact. This isn't contact that the dumper is doing for their own reason because they are thinking of you. If the contact is necessary, there is another reason at play. Good dumper contact is unnecessary. Good dumper contact is only happening because the dumper is thinking about, is wondering about, is intrigued about, is missing their ex-dumpee. So if you receive contact from your dumper that is unnecessary, that is unsolicited, that is something which isn't a response to you, then this is good dumper contact. Unless the contact and the content of the contact is negative. Now, of course, this goes without saying, but if you receive a message from your ex and the content of this message is negative, then of course it's not good. So not only are we looking for contact which is unnecessary, which has come from them and not a reply, but of course we need to look at the type of contact from within. Now look, it doesn't matter how long this contact is. I am a big believer that you can grow breadcrumbs. So if you receive a very short message, as long as it's not negative, this is not a problem. So for me, it doesn't matter if your ex-dumper sends you a short message, as long as the message is positive. As long as the message isn't something which is negative, which is abusive, which is horrible. So to reiterate, good dumper contact is unnecessary. It comes from the dumper and it is not a response because the dumpee shouldn't have sent a message out first anyway. And on top of this, the content of the message is positive. Now, this doesn't mean it has to be over the top, ecstatic, saying, I really miss you, I want to get back together. That is unrealistic. When I say positive, I mean it is something which isn't negative. So if you want to think of it as neutral, that is fine as well. If your ex-dumper sends you a message and it just says, hi, how are you? That is positive. Okay, it's not incredibly, excitingly amazing. Okay, it's not something which is saying, I really miss you, I want you back in my life, let's get back together. That, unfortunately, is unrealistic. But something as basic as, hi, how are you, is positive. It's them asking you a question. It's them wondering how you are. It is them putting something out to you which isn't necessary, and they're putting something out to you which isn't negative. So don't look for something which looks incredibly amazing with 100 kisses at the end or loads of heart emojis. Don't be looking for that. That is unrealistic. Something positive basically means that it's not negative. So even if you think to yourself, well, this is just kind of neutral, well, that's positive as long as it's not negative. So good dumper contact is what you are looking for. But unfortunately, that is not the only dumper contact you might receive, and the next 2 points of this podcast will be describing contact that you might receive as a dumpee that you need to be aware of, which unfortunately is not the type of contact that you are looking for. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast about dumper contact, the good, the bad and the ugly. And point number 2 is unfortunately the bad. So bad contact comes from a dumper in 2 forms. The first is where the contact is obviously bad. Telling their dumpee to leave them alone is one such example of this. Now again, as I was mentioning in point number 1, if you have been dumped, I suggest you never contact your ex again unless they contact you first. So if you have ignored this advice, and if you've started to contact your dumper, then unfortunately, you might receive this type of contact. You might receive a message from your ex asking you to leave them alone. This is one example of what bad dumper contact might be like. However, there are other dumper contact which can be more subtle, which unfortunately is still bad. This type of contact can give false hope by seemingly being in a pleasant way, but ultimately not leading where you would hope. Again, this is generally based on the fact if a dumper is responding to a dumpee. And like I said, if you are a dumpee, I don't suggest you reach out to your ex. The clue is all in the context. Was the contact necessary or unnecessary? If it was necessary, then this is a bad sign regarding reconnecting. This doesn't necessarily mean that your ex hates you. This doesn't necessarily mean that you can't one day reconnect. But what it does mean is that right now, they aren't contacting you because they want to reconnect. If you have a child together, then your ex, the dumper, might contact you about the child. That doesn't mean they want to get back together with you. If your ex, the dumper, contacts you and they ask you whether you have something important at your house which belongs to them, again, unfortunately, this is not contact which is positive in respect to you trying to get back together. This is necessary contact. So it is all in the context. Was the contact in response to the dumpee reaching out? That is what you need to be looking for. Was it a pleasant response, but lacking any real interest of progressing the conversation? Because if you do reach out to your dumper and you do receive a response which seems pleasant, which seems nice, unfortunately, this is often the dumper replying to you via pity. They are replying to you in a way where they're trying to be respectful, but it is through pity. It's not through genuine love, affection, and attention. I've known of many instances where dumpees have reached out to their ex-dumper and they've received contact back which seemed positive, but unfortunately, this has been unable to progress. This is the type of contact which can't be progressed because it is not coming from the right place. It is not coming from intrigue. It is not coming from enough romantic emotional attraction which has been built up. It is coming from respectful response and pity, and you do not want this if you are a dumpee. Ultimately, bad dumper contact is the opposite to point number 1 in which we was explaining the good dumper contact. But bad dumper contact isn't the worst contact you can receive from your dumper. Unfortunately, we will have to discuss that one in the next point. And point number 3, the final point of today's podcast, is the worst contact you can receive from a dumper. And that is the ugly. So unfortunately, a dumper might sometimes make ugly contact. This is when the dumper sent angry or abusive messages to their dumpee. This might be once again in response to a dumpee contacting their ex, but sometimes this is not the case. Sometimes a dumper will sadly send out negative, angry, argumentative, abusive contact to their dumpee for no apparent reason. Sometimes the dumpee has been in no contact. Sometimes the dumpee has had no interaction for many weeks or months, and yet the dumper might still send a message of negativity. This can be very uncomfortable for a dumpee to read, and unfortunately, this is a position where the dumpee just has to bite their tongue, because there is nothing much a dumpee can say to improve the situation. Of course, you've got to use your common sense. If the dumper is accusing you of something which is inaccurate, of course, respond and put your point of view across. But if it is just a negative comment, just a message out of nowhere sending abuse, my own personal opinion is that you just ignore this. If the abuse continues, if the negativity continues, you might unfortunately have to consider blocking your ex. This, of course, won't improve your chances of getting your ex back, but if your dumper is behaving in this way, do you even want them back? Is it even possible you could get them back? You've got to think of things logically. Ultimately, your mental health must come first. And if your mental health is suffering from ugly dumper contact, then you need to think of what you can do to improve your self-esteem, to improve your mental health. And if this means blocking your ex, then you might need to consider doing this. Now, thankfully, ugly dumper contact is quite rare. Sometimes there is a misunderstanding, sometimes an accusation has been made, which seems quite ugly, and maybe the dumpee can rectify this, as I said a few moments ago. But thankfully, ugly dumper contact which comes out of nowhere is quite rare. But if it happens, you must deal with it in the right way. And in most instances, that is to ignore it. Any response is likely to inflame the situation and make things worse. You don't want to be making things worse. If you can't make things better, then make sure you aren't making it worse. If you do that, you're doing everything you can. Now, would you even want your ex back if they behave in this way? Who knows? Some of you might, some of you might not. But ultimately, at this moment in time, your ex, the dumper, is clearly thinking in a very negative way when they think of you and your previous relationship. You must move forward with your life and live in a positive way, making new connections and improving the chance of you one day finding somebody even better than your ex. This goes for every position as well. Even if you receive good dumper contact, you still need to be making sure you live your life, because good dumper contact is just that. It is contact, and contact isn't getting your ex back. The communication stage needs to be successfully navigated, and then a meet can take place. From that point on, you have the chance of reconnecting, building a new relationship on stronger foundations, but nothing can be guaranteed. So whether your contact from the dumper is good, bad, or ugly, you need to be making sure you live your life. We can't get yesterday back. Don't waste your life. Don't sit around. Don't clock watch. Don't wait around. Move forward with positivity, make new connections, and live the best life you can. And it's win-win. You will either get your ex back or you will find somebody even better. Do enough of the right things, and the right things will eventually come to you. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.
Yeah, if you miss your ex, we can help with that. Help you get him back, or we can help find you someone else. Yeah, Vincent Bo, the relationship coach, giving you some insight, bringing you a new approach. DateMe.tips, go and check the site, giving you advice, helping with your love life. Get your ex back, or move to the next. Ain't no sweat, you know Vincent Bo got you. Finding love ain't no problem. Yeah, DateMe.tips, check it out now.